Welcome to A Century of Cinema. Today I will be exploring my favourite films of 1942. First up is The Major and the Minor. It stars Ginger Rogers as Susan Applegate, a young woman who, fed up with the city life and crappy jobs and lecherous men, decides to make use of the train fare home which she has been holding on to. However, when she discovers that the price has gone up since she arrived, she decides to pose as a 12-year-old to get a half-price fare. On the train, while fleeing from conductors who have caught onto her ruse, she enters the cabin of Major Philip Kirby, played by Ray Milland. He is heading to his teaching position at a military academy, but he really wants to be in the fight. He sees Susan, or Susu as she now calls herself, as a frightened child and agrees to let her stay with him. However, when Philip's fiancée Pamela meets the train, she sees Susan in his cabin and reacts strongly. Philip then implores Susan to come back with him to straighten everything out. She agrees and stays at Pamela's house in the room of her teenage sister Lucy, a scene-stealing Diana Lynn, who immediately realizes that Susan is not a 12-year-old girl, yet recruits her to stop her sister from marrying Philip because Lucy knows that Pamela is bad for Philip. Meanwhile, Susu becomes insanely popular with the hormonal cadets who constantly pour at her, just as she becomes more and more enamored with Philip. Directed by Billy Wilder, his first time at the helm of an American movie, he previously directed the 1934 French film Mauvais Grain, but had really only made his name as a writer by this point. He also co-wrote The Major and the Minor with Charles Brackett, which is based on the play Connie Goes Home by Edward Childs Carpenter. This is a very funny film. Ginger is hilarious trying to pull off the little girl act, and Milland is charming as hell, being completely clueless about what's going on. And then there's those moments where he gets uncomfortable when for a second he sees through the little girl facade to the real woman underneath and has to rein in his attraction to her. Diana Lynn as Lucy gives a great supporting performance, and the bond Lucy and Susan develop feels very genuine and organic. And Ray Milland and Ginger Rogers nail their roles and give an extra spark to an already crackling screenplay.
Do you have a nightie with you?
Yes, Uncle Philip.
Well, then suppose you go in there and get changed.
You really think so?
Why, sure. Just sing out if you have any trouble with your buttons.
Oh, I haven't had any button trouble for a long, long time.
Next is Alfred Hitchcock's Saboteur. Robert Cummings stars as aircraft factory worker Barry Kane, who, after his friend is killed in a fiery act of sabotage at the factory, is accused of the crime and goes on the run, chasing clues that can clear his name. He is led to the home of Charles Tobin, played by Otto Kruger, who at first seems amiable and helpful, but soon turns out to be the leader of a group of fascist-supporting saboteurs and spies. He escapes from them and takes refuge with a kindly blind man who instinctively believes in Barry's innocence. He entreats his niece Patricia, Priscilla Lane, to take Barry to the blacksmith to remove his handcuffs. Patricia, however, doesn't share her uncle's faith in Barry and proceeds to try and turn him in. To prevent this, Barry sends the car off the road and takes Patricia with him to hunt down more clues. As the facts begin to pile up in Barry's favour, Patricia starts to believe him, and they uncover a plot to blow up a dam. When Barry is discovered by the saboteurs, he poses as one of them until he is exposed by Tobin. The saboteurs have now also captured Patricia. The plot to blow up the dam is thwarted, but the saboteurs have a second plan to blow up a battleship at the shipyard. It is up to Barry and Patricia to try to stop it. This is Hitchcock's bread and butter: a group of evil spies, a wrongly accused man, and of course a pretty blonde. He has made a version of this movie a bunch of times, and you know what? They're always good, and somehow always manage to feel unique. Robert Cummings isn't anything to rave about as an actor, but he does a good job here, with the film essentially on his shoulders. And I've always been quite fond of Priscilla Lane. I think she was an excellent actress with good comedic chops too, which serves her well as a Hitchcock blonde. Otto Kruger as Tobin is devilishly good, fiendishly grinning his way through his scenes, so easy to despise, as is a very young Lloyd Nolan as Fry, the original saboteur. The The screenplay by Peter Viertel, Joan Harrison, and Dorothy Parker is taut and witty, and naturally, the direction is impeccable. It's Hitchcock right smack dab in his wheelhouse. So, Alfred Hitchcock is my best director choice for 1942. The Talk of the Town, directed by George Stevens, stars Cary Grant as Leopold Dilg, who is accused of burning down a mill which resulted in the death of a worker. He escapes and hides in a house owned by old friend Nora Shelley, Jean Arthur, who has rented the house out for the summer to legal scholar Professor Lightcap, played by Ronald Colman. Nora hides Leopold in the attic when Lightcap arrives a day early. In order to shield Leopold, Nora finagles her way to staying on at the house as Lightcap's assistant. Leopold and Nora start planning to convince Lightcap to help Leopold prove his innocence, with Leopold posing as the gardener, Joseph. The two men, though they have very different philosophies on the law, grow to respect each other and develop a strong bond, just as they both develop their own rapport with Nora. At the height of this trio of respect and admiration, Lightcap discovers Leopold's true identity and calls the police. However, his fondness for Leopold and Nora, and certain inconsistencies in the case, drive Lightcap to investigate it. The Talk of the Town defies genre. At times it is a noirish crime thriller, a romantic comedy, a prestige drama, or a social commentary, and the three leads masterfully navigate each tone. Cary Grant, the idealistic wildcard, Ronald Colman, the stalwart repressed genius, and their anchor to reality, Jean Arthur. There is a love triangle here, but not as we usually know it. Nobody is fighting over Nora. In fact, it seems that both men, if they could not be with her, would genuinely wish the best for the couple. And maybe this is just me, but unlike other such triangles, I could not pick where they would take it, and was torn about which way it should go. All this is a testament to the performances, the direction, and especially the incredible Oscar-nominated screenplay by Irwin Shaw and Sidney Buckman, from a story by Sidney Harman. A highlight of which is the in-depth discussions about law and legal ethics between Leopold and Lightcap. I like to imagine that Shaw and Buckman each chose a character and wrote their side of the argument. The Talk of the Town is a unique piece of work with a talented cast and a screenplay which is my favourite of 1942. Next is Random Harvest, directed by Mervyn LeRoy and based on James Hilton's novel. Ronald Colman plays a soldier injured in World War I who has lost his memory and has problems with his speech. John Smith, as the staff refer to him, is in a mental hospital hoping someone will find him and tell him who he is. After an elderly couple searching for their son say that he is not the one, he takes advantage of the end of the war celebrations and escapes from the hospital. He then meets stage performer Paula, Greer Garson, who shelters him and takes him away to the country when he accidentally hurts someone who would expose him. A romance blossoms between Paula and the man she affectionately now calls Smithy, and they marry and have a child. When Smithy receives a job offer in the city, he goes for an interview, but is hit by a car on the way. He awakes with his previous memory restored, but with no memory of his life with Paula. All he has is the key to their house. He remembers that he is the wealthy Charles Rainier of Random Hall. He proceeds to take over the family business and is wooed by his adoring stepniece Kitty, played by Susan Peters. To discuss the plot of Random Harvest further would be doing a disservice to anyone who has not seen it, and to the film itself, because certain revelations are depicted brilliantly. This is a beautiful movie. Granted, the whole memory thing is very implausible, perhaps completely impossible, but by the time you get to that, you are so enamored by Paula and Smithy and invested in their story that you don't care a bit. At least that's how it went for me. It is the performances that truly distinguish this film and tug at your heartstrings. Greer Garson would win the Oscar for Best Actress of 1942, but it was not for this, it was for Mrs. Miniver. But in my opinion, her work in Random Harvest tops that. Not quite enough to get my Best Actress nod, being pipped by one of my all-time favourite performances. but she is none the less remarkable, being incredibly charming and moving at every turn. And Susan Peters is an absolute delight as Kitty. Because you get so wrapped up in wanting Charles to remember Paula, it would be easy to dislike Kitty. But Peters is just so damn lovely that you really want her to be happy too. Susan Peters' career was tragically cut short when an accidental shooting put her in a wheelchair for the rest of her unfortunately short life, dying in 1952. The knowledge of that lends a bittersweet note to her performance here. And then there's Ronald Colman, who delivers one, well, kind of two, of his best performances as Charles/Smithy.
Some people came to see me at the hospital, but I wasn't their son.
Oh, I bet they were disappointed, weren't they?
Yes, I think so. I was too.
From his early scenes as the broken, stammering Smithy, to the later, more confident and self-assured Charles, who falls into a befuddled daze when something triggers a vague memory, Colman totally nails all of it. That's why Ronald Colman is my choice for Best Actor of 1942. Finally, it's Now Voyager, directed by Irving Rapper and written by Casey Robinson, based on the novel by Olive Higgins Prouty. Charlotte Vale, played by Bette Davis, is the youngest child of a wealthy Boston family, who has grown up being dominated by her mother, played by Gladys Cooper. When she is at the verge of a nervous breakdown, her sister-in-law Lisa brings to the Vale home a psychiatrist named Dr. Jackwith, Claude Rains, to help Charlotte. He immediately shows her an understanding and compassion that she has sorely missed under the tyrannical rule of her mother. He takes her to his sanitarium called Cascade. Charlotte begins to blossom away from her mother, and when her time at Cascade ends, Lisa books passage for Charlotte on a cruise. On the cruise, the beautifully made-over new Charlotte meets Jerry Durrance, played by Paul Henreid, a charming, unhappily married man, and a tentative romance develops between them. Jerry is trapped by his sense of duty to his wife and love for his children, particularly his youngest, Tina, whose emotional issues are reminiscent of Charlotte's. Charlotte then returns home, surprising everyone she knows with her appearance and demeanor. Her mother attempts to put Charlotte back under her control, but Charlotte stays true to herself, aided by her experience with Jerry, the feeling of being loved and valued. She even attracts the affections of an attractive widower who soon proposes to her. Yet a chance encounter with Jerry at a party shows Charlotte that she could not love anyone else, and she breaks her engagement. After her mother dies during an argument with Charlotte, she rushes back to Cascade, where she finds that Jerry's daughter Tina is now there. Charlotte takes Tina under her wing and provides her with the motherly love they both needed so desperately. Tina shows vast improvement immediately, and Charlotte asks Dr. Jackwith if she can take Tina home with her. Aware of Charlotte's relationship with Jerry, Dr. Jackwith consents under the provision that she and Jerry don't succumb to their passions, as Charlotte tells Jerry when he visits.
He allowed this visit as a test. And if I can't stand such tests, I'll lose Tina. And we'll lose each other. Jerry, please help me.
This is my favorite Bette Davis movie. One of my favorite movies of all time, actually. I was worried I would have to relegate it to second place for 1942 because my favorite movie ever was actually made in the same year. However, it was released in January 1943, so we have a loophole for Now Voyager to slip through. Bette is truly incredible in every single scene. Her transformation from spinster Aunt Charlotte to glamorous socialite is striking, yet she carries the weight of her past in her eyes and expression. Everything she feels need not be said at all. You can read everything in her face. On top of Betty's beautiful performance, there is also so much more to love about Now Voyager. Paul Henreid is incredibly charming and effective as Jerry. Claude Rains gives one of his finest performances as the impossibly endearing Dr. Jackwith. The screenplay rises high above the standard romantic melodrama, giving these great performers so much to work with. Max Steiner's greatest score, built on the heart-wrenching love theme, which became the song It Can't Be Wrong, that swells whenever Jerry lights their cigarettes in that iconic way, which I must admit I have imitated almost every time I lit an attractive woman's cigarette. I must watch this movie at least once a year, and it is always a treat. So, for my favourite Bette Davis performance, she has to get Best Actress. And for being one of my absolute favourite films, now Voyager is my choice for Best Picture of 1942. Join me next time on A Century of Cinema, when I will be discussing my favourite films of 1943. Now go watch a movie.